Hello and welcome to the Ideal Nutrition Podcast. My name is Aidan Muir and this is episode 100 where we thought we'd try something a little bit different. As usual, I'm joined by my co-host Leah Higl, but we will also be joined by some of the members of the Ideal Nutrition team as well, partly because we just wanted to celebrate the milestone of 100.
Yeah, something fun.
Yeah, I think it's a cool milestone. So we just want to do something a little bit different. And we're going to go through some questions that we'll ask each of us individually, just starting with myself and then Leah, and then we'll bring the rest of the team in. And hopefully there is some value in those questions as well to be gotten from.
So we had a little think about what we were going to ask each other, and we really wanted to focus on, I guess, our journeys as dietitians and I guess our approach to practice and things like that. And hopefully everyone can take a little bit away from those. So I'm going to start with asking you a few questions, Aidan. So what's something you wish you knew about nutrition before being a dietitian?
So I looked at our show notes in advance and I had the same one as you, which I figured was going to be the same. So I won't start there.
Oh, yeah. We talk about that all the time.
Yeah. So one thing I wanted to do that might be a little bit different is I wish I understood a bit more about how to look at research. I wish I understood the value of systematic reviews and meta-analyses just at a base level, right? Because there's obviously so many flaws that you can misinterpret research just by looking at that, right? Yeah. But just at a base level, understand that. An example I'm going to use is, it's a funny example, but when I was living at home, 17 years old, I started getting to the gym and I bought protein powder and my dad hated it. He thought it was the worst thing in the world, and his evidence was that there was a study that he had been around during a time at Wollongong University that linked protein powder with kidney decline, functional declines of kidney. And I just knew because I'd read on bodybuilding.com that was fine.
Yeah.
But outside, I'm like, I wish I could just go and get a systematic review up and be like, the summary of the research shows that this is fine. You've got one study that is negative, but the summary of the research of all of the studies when you combine it all together shows that this is fine. I wish I knew that earlier.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point. It's something that I think as health professionals now, we kind of don't think about not having that that knowledge. So second question is, what's a nutrition thing you were embarrassed you did before being a dietitian and before learning about nutrition? Yeah,
I'm sure I've told this one before, but the one that I find funny is I first learned about if it fits your macros, and I thought the actual numbers really mattered, and I thought that it mattered to the point that if you were aiming for, say, 100 grams of protein, 150 grams of carbs, and 60 grams of fat, if you were at 50 grams of fat for the day, you should do something to get to the 60.
Right.
And if you had no room in your carbs or protein left, you should only have a fat source kind of thing. I thought it mattered. That wasn't from a place of disordered eating. I just thought it'd make me jacked if I did that.
Yeah, you had a goal that you wanted to reach, yeah.
And the example I'm sure I've said is I drank 10 mil of olive oil to get 10 grams of fat. Whereas I know now that the research shows that I would have gotten exactly the same results if I'd eaten pretty much anything to fill out the rest of my calories after I'd consumed enough protein.
Yeah, that's a good one too. And final question is, what is one of the most impactful experiences you've had working with clients or since being a dietitian?
This is a hard one for me to answer because I don't really think about that too much. Yeah. If people get results, I've kind of expected that to happen. I don't know how else to say that, but it's I don't know. But the one that kind of got to me a little bit is a bit from left field because it's say I've had somebody who's lost 50 kilos or something like that. As I said, it's kind of oh, well, that was simple from the calories in, calories out standpoint. It was more the how do we actually make this happen kind of thing. But that's not really too impactful to me, although I really, really enjoy that process. It's not I've gotten to the end of the 50 kilo journey and been oh, that was incredible kind of thing.
Sure.
The stuff that really impacted me more was one example was about, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, 2 years ago. I had a client who had really, really, really bad headaches, and I'd been working with her for about a year at this time. And she'd had really bad headaches the entire time. And we did the RPAH elimination diet, so a food chemical elimination diet, and her headaches just disappeared. Her entire life, pretty much, since the age of, 14 onwards through the mid-20s. She'd had really bad headaches every single day. She'd been on medications. Doctors couldn't find an answer. and this just solved it.
Yeah.
And that's impactful to me in two ways. One way, the very superficial level, is that I helped a person. It's like if she didn't see me, that problem never would have been solved, I don't think. And then the second way is, I think that first part I said about how I'd worked with her for a year already. It's like, I've been doing this for a very, very long time. It's cool to like not give up on something and continue trying to learn more and everything like that, and then have it pay off. Like, it's a good friendly reminder.
Yeah, okay. I love that one. So anything else you kind of want to add for the special 100th episode?
No, I don't know. I'm not really huge on milestones like this. Like,
yeah, I've noticed that.
I assume I'll be doing this for a long time. There's a cool stat that I reflect on a bit, and that's something along the lines of like only 5% of podcasts ever get beyond episode 20. So I think the fact that we're at 100 is huge. It's
pretty cool,
but
yeah.
Yeah, once again, I'm a pretty consistent person with a lot of things, and I assume they'll continue.
You always assumed we'd be here.
Yeah. Like, as long as you're still here, I assume we're going to be here.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. Let's do the questions back on your end. So,
sounds like a plan.
What was the first question again?
What's something you wish you knew about nutrition before being a dietitian?
Yeah.
So like, I know you said we had the same one when we were kind of thinking about this, and it is something we always talk about, like how we wish all of our clients knew this as well. But it's just knowing about like the theory of energy balance. So just kind of having that really, like even a simple understanding of like calories in versus calories out for body composition changes. Like, it would have stopped me from making so many stupid mistakes, like especially like when I was younger and I'm like, oh, I want to be leaner, like I was really into like, I guess, the bodybuilding world at least, and I was like, oh, I'd love to be leaner, and I would do things like clean eating and wonder why that wasn't working for me, or I'd just take these like really weird dietary approaches and I'm like, why isn't this helping me get leaner, when if I just knew about calorie deficits and calories in versus calories out, there would have been a lot of things I would have either known why they didn't work, or I just wouldn't have approached it in that way. So I think if I could know anything back then, it would have been at least a basic understanding of that. Would have been so helpful.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I thought the same.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't do many stupid things, but it's kind of like, it would have just clarified things so much and made it so much easier. Yeah. Yeah,
it makes the whole process of body composition change. Like, you just know how to approach it better.
Yeah.
And I think having that clarity would have been so helpful.
Yeah. And I guess that leads into the next thing about what's something you did before you knew all this that was embarrassing. What is one of those things?
I'd say I did quite a lot in like my teenage years, like soup diets and other fad stuff that I'd never even think about now. But the one I look back on, I actually did like maybe a year or almost 2 years into my nutrition degree. And it was as I was becoming vegan.
Yeah.
And I went raw till 4, like not like hardcore, but I was like eating an entire watermelon for lunch and like eating all like 5 banana smoothies.
Yeah.
And like, I think because raw to 4 was a huge thing in that specific point in time, particularly amongst like the vegan community. And we had like anyone who was vegan back then will have known of like Freely the Banana Girl and like Durian Rider, and that whole world was really huge. And for a hot minute, I did get sucked into that, even knowing some things about nutrition. Like, there was still part of that I don't know, like spoke to me at the time. I don't know why, but I'm like really embarrassed to admit that I actually did do that.
Yeah.
And I was so fatigued. I was like, my IBS was awful. Like, my training sucked.
Yeah.
And so that's why it didn't stick. Like, I didn't continue it. But I was like, I can't believe I even tried that.
Yeah.
So I'm always a little bit embarrassed to admit that. Although I feel like it does help me relate more so to my vegan clients, especially who were becoming vegan around the same time, because we all have like the same experience.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of relate with a different experience in that, like 3 years into my dietetics degree, I had been avoiding cheese due to lactose intolerance. Mm-hmm. And every time I get a client with lactose intolerance now, I always relate to the fact that I'm like, I was 3 years in studying this and I didn't know that something like cheddar cheese has pretty much no lactose and I wouldn't have got symptoms.
Yeah.
Like there's no way. And like I had identified lactose intolerance in like 2 years previously. So like 2 years into that, 3 years into the degree, didn't know that.
Yeah. You were still giving up this thing you did not have to.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it makes it a lot more relatable when I try and like go through that with clients. But yeah. Cool. So then the final question, what's an impactful experience that you've had working with clients?
Yeah, I feel like I'm probably a little bit more sentimental than you. I'm not the most sentimental person in the world. But when people have good experiences with me and they're like even following up like after us working together, I always feel like that's a bit impactful on me. It makes me happy to come to work and do what I do. But there's probably one client or client story that really stands out in my several years of being a dietitian. And it was actually a client that had more like disordered eating patterns, a lot of body image issues, and they came to me because they had lost their period. They were an athlete. They did kind of ultra endurance stuff. And they're like, look, I've lost my period. I'm losing my hair. I feel awful, but I'm really scared of gaining weight because they had, like I said, all these body image issues and all this pressure coming from family to be like really thin just from a cultural perspective. And in our process of working together, like we worked together for probably around a year, and it was a slow start as we kind of built that rapport. But it got to a point where she trusted me enough to allow like weight gain to occur. We really worked on a lot of body image things, like in terms of like body checking and different behaviors that weren't helpful. Over our time, we managed to put a little bit of weight on her. She was comfortable with that, which is like even a bigger thing than allowing the weight gain in the first place. She was happy. We restored her period. She really wanted to get pregnant, which is another reason that she came to me, wanting to restore her period. And in that time, she did end up falling pregnant after feeling like she wasn't going to be able to because she'd been trying for so long. And I'm like not the biggest like baby person. I'm not like I don't like kids. I'm like not interested in pregnancy for myself, but I found myself like really celebrating this moment with her because I'm like, far out, like this is a huge milestone in her life that we've been able to kind of help her get to, and we've been through like all this stuff together. And I don't know, I think that just impacted me a lot. And like we don't work together anymore because she really got out of the experience what she wanted, but she still like updates me every now and then. And she updated me like a few months ago being like, baby number 2 is on the way. I'm married. Like, I feel great. I'm like maintaining this extra body weight and I feel really good. And I was like, I'm even like kind of getting goosebumps thinking about it because I'm like, I impacted that person so much. Yeah. And it might be like, I guess it's kind of selfish, but like it makes me feel good. Yeah. And I don't know, that just impacted me and it was like, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome. Yeah, I love that. I don't know. I think it's one of the coolest things of our job that we can have such an impact in some ways. It's not always going to be like that, but when we get a moment like that, huge. It's just really cool. Like I love all like the usual day-to-day stuff of being a dietitian. Like I love the sports nutrition stuff and all that kind of nitty-gritty thing that maybe isn't the most impactful on someone's life as a whole, but it's just like cool and I enjoy it. But when I get a moment like that, I was like, hell yes. Yeah. This is great. So good. Let's get the first member of the team in here. All right. So we have team member number 1 with us, Hanah Mills. So we're going to start with, who are you and what do you do at Ideal? Yeah, thank you. So I'm an accredited practicing dietitian. I'm about to start my sports dietetic qualification, so that's very exciting. So I've been with Ideal for about a year and a half now. I've seen a lot of different types of clients. So endurance athletes and combat athletes are definitely some of my favorite. I love the science and the math that goes into that. I'm big math freak. So I've done a lot with that, and then obviously a lot of powerlifters
working at a powerlifting gym.
Yeah, I mean, we are all based out of Valhalla, like powerlifting gyms, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So we do see a lot of them. But yeah, they're probably some of my favorite clients to see.
Sweet, that's a great intro. So I'm going to get into asking you a few questions now that both Aidan and I have completed already. But the first one is, what's something you wish you knew about nutrition before becoming a dietitian and before you did your degree?
Yeah. I did think about this question quite a lot because I look to social media for a lot of nutrition knowledge, as you do, I think, these days. But I think the one thing that, if there was one thing that I could change, I actually wish I looked to more at the Australian Dietary Guidelines. And I know that's such a standard dietitian answer to say. But when you think about the Australian Dietary Guidelines, like, they were made to make people healthy, right? Like, they're a standard diet guideline for the average person to ensure that they can be healthy and prevent any chronic disease. So I think it's a really good starting point where it shows you the food groups. So, your whole grains, your protein, your dairy, your fruit and vegetable serves, and roughly how much you should be having. And I think that's a really good starting point, and as well as, limiting the discretionary items, opting for water, and limiting, saturated fats as well. And so I think it's a really good starting point and something that I wish I kind of looked to more rather than social media, where I think it was more about limiting and restriction and go keto or go vegan or intermittent fast. Like, it's more around the fad diets, I think, on social media, or even, if it fits your macros. I don't think it displays a good picture of what nutrition should look like as a whole. And so I think that can lead a lot of people down disordered eating or, kind of build an unhealthy relationship with food, because often you don't enjoy those fad diets. So to summarize it, I think I wish I knew more about the Australian Dietary Guidelines and the evidence behind them, and why they're probably the best source to look to for nutrition advice if you know nothing.
Yeah, I guess in terms of like knowing like your basic nutrition knowledge before like delving into like fad diets and like things that I guess have more sex appeal, like almost like obviously like going keto or vegan seems like
it seems cool. It seems
cool.
Fun.
Where you're like, or the Australian Dietary Guidelines.
Yeah, I don't eat sugar. I'm so cool. Like, it kind of gives you an identity almost. Yeah. But no, when taking a step back, it's like, oh no, if you just want to be healthy and feel good, have an understanding of what a balanced diet looks like, and then build from there and make it more individualized from there.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So leading on from that, what's something that you did from a nutrition perspective in the past that maybe you're like slightly embarrassed to admit? I feel like we've all got at least one story.
I've got multiple. I was literally talking to the guys downstairs before about which story I should use, and I think you of all people are going to hate this answer the most, or kind of be ashamed of this answer the most. But basically, so I used to be a cross-country runner.
Yeah.
And like a couple of things, I had some disordered eating behaviors back then where I would, really restrict my food throughout the week, because basically all the boys were really lean. And so I was like, oh, if I'm lean, then I'll be faster. Yeah. Like, I had no understanding of, oh, no, they have more testosterone. Of course they're going to be faster.
Straight comparing.
Like, looking at their body compared to mine, I'm like, that's how they're faster. I need to have less food. And so I really underfueled. Unfortunately, I didn't have my period and things like that throughout high school, which, I'm also kind of like disappointed to look back on. But then the main part that you're going to hate is, basically the week before each cross-country race, I would go, quote unquote, veganish. So I knew that like protein was important, and so I knew that protein came from chicken and eggs. That was kind of my understanding, and other meat sources. And so I would basically eat fruit and veggies, whole grains throughout the week, and then I would have a little bit of chicken and egg, to top up my protein source.
Yeah.
Probably like half of a chicken breast, like nothing, not meeting my requirements whatsoever. So I would do that so that I was lean as possible so that I could race better on the day. Looking back, I'm like, I was so fatigued even stepping onto that, race line. Yeah, because I was so underfueled.
Yeah, but at least I guess it gives you some insight into clients now who maybe feel like the same way, especially working with endurance athletes. I think that the concept of like always being leaner at any cost.
Yeah.
I think it's a big thing. So,
there's a strong stigma associated, and like, I can really relate to it.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm like,
you're like, oh no. I can't believe I did that.
I'm like, the week before your race, you want to be eating more than what you usually would, you know?
Do a
like,
bit of a carb load or something.
Yeah, exactly. And I would eat nothing. Yeah.
And the final question, what is one of the most impactful experiences you've had either working with clients or as being a dietitian?
Yeah. So probably one of the most impactful experiences for me was when I saw a food chemical intolerance client, and she had a lot of symptoms. So she was experiencing bloating, pain, smelly gas, diarrhea. She had constipation on and off, as well as histamine reactions. So like sneezing, and she had hives on her skin and things like that. She'd seen multiple healthcare practitioners. So she'd seen dietitians, nutritionists, naturopaths, doctors. She'd had colonoscopies over the course of 7 years.
Wow, okay. That's a long time.
Yeah, so she was 23. So she was quite young. So she'd been experiencing this since high school, and she had no idea what was going on. And she came to me, you know how like naturopaths do the blood tests, and they're basically like, oh, you're intolerant to all these foods. Yeah. Which were all the foods that she would usually eat because she had that exposure to the antibodies, right? But yeah, so she came to me with that, and she was just so lost and so confused. And so basically, it was really impacting her quality of life. She was embarrassed to go to the gym. She wouldn't go out because she was scared of what was going to happen. She would leave work early sometimes because she was in so much pain. So it was quite, a terrible experience for her. And
so it impacts like every aspect of your life with those kinds of symptoms.
100%. Yeah. Like both the way you look, the way you feel, and you're just in so much pain all the time. And so, we put her through the RPAH elimination diet, and we established that she was intolerant to salicylates. And so obviously it's a process going through the food chemical.
It's quite the process.
Elimination. Yeah, I know. Like the only fruit you can have is a pear. Like
it's not very exciting.
And when they're not in season, it's quite a limiting process. So once we excluded the salicylates from her diet, basically all of her symptoms went away.
That's pretty cool.
It was really cool because one nutrition intervention, as much as, it's a process and a half, was able to restore her quality of life.
Yeah. When you can have that kind of, I guess, impact on a client, that feels pretty special.
It was really cool. It was really cool to be like, you know what, you can live your normal life. You cannot experience this pain, bloating and everything. As long as we just avoid salicylates. And it was really eye-opening for her. So I guess, for me as a dietitian, you hear that a lot of people refer to dietitians as the people who quote unquote tell you to eat healthy food, right? And I think it was impactful for me to see how nutrition can make such a big difference to someone's life.
Yeah, I love that. That's so nice. Because when I was talking to Aidan, we were saying that he's not very sentimental, but I'm probably a bit more, and I feel like you're probably pretty similar to me. When you have an experience like that, it can just feel it's special and it's nice. And it's impactful.
We're crying together, the client and I were like, woo!
Yes, we've solved this massive thing in your life. Success.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for talking with me, Hanah. Is there anything that you want to plug? Do you want to kind of say your Instagram handle or anything else?
Yeah, of course. So if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me at Hanah Mills on Instagram. So it's just Hanah with one N. My parents made that difficult for me.
I always spell your name with two.
It's okay. I get used to it. So just Hanah Mills. And I love to take on, any endurance or combat athlete clients or answer any questions.
All right. Awesome. All right. We're going to bring in Tyler now. Okay, Tyler, you're up.
Hi.
Do you want to give us a brief intro on who you are and what you do at Ideal?
Sure. Yeah, so my name's Tyler. I'm a dietitian for Aidan Nutrition. I was just joking with Aidan downstairs, trying to figure out how long I've been with Aidan Nutrition for, and it's coming up on 4 years.
Is it really?
Aidan's like, I'm going to have to figure out what long service leave is and how that works.
10 years is going to come up quick.
So I've been with Ideal Nutrition nearly 4 years. Obviously, I'm pretty confident and happy working with a pretty broad range of clients and have over the years, but I specifically have a passion for performance-based nutrition. So working with athletes, whether that be powerlifters, crossfitters, like team sports athletes, football players, cricketers, anything across that sort of sports spectrum I love. But obviously very comfortable in other sort of more clinical-based spaces as well. Mm-hmm. I've got quite a number of clients who are type 1 diabetics, for example, or that I do FODMAPs, elimination style diets with, and treat IBS and all those sorts of things. So pretty comfortable with the broad spectrum, but performance is definitely my sort of
like your wheelhouse.
Preferred niche, yeah.
Yeah. So going to run you through a few questions that we're asking the whole team. And the first one is, what's something you wish you knew about nutrition before you did your degree and before being a dietitian?
Okay, that's a good question. So I think I was thinking about this a little bit before, and one of the things that I kind of knew and that I think most people know coming in, or at least a lot of people know coming into considering their own nutrition, is that what kind of nutrition can boil down to is calories in versus calories out, whether that be for maintaining weight, gaining weight, losing weight. It just comes right down to like simplest like statement of calories versus in versus calories out is going to give you those results. But what I wish I knew sort of before was that there is so much more to it than that.
Sure, that it's more complex than that.
Yeah, like it's as simple as that, but it's also infinitely more complex.
Yeah,
like
it's both at the same time.
Yeah, like personally, I'm a very sort of maths and science, like logical mindset. Whereas like, cool, if I do A plus B, it'll equal C. Mm-hmm. And that's how calories in, calories out works. But most people don't seem to work like that. You can give them all the information, all the education, you can give them meal plan, you can give them calories and macros, and sometimes they still won't see results, even if they think they're following those calories and macros. So there's so much more to it. You have to figure out what else is going on. What other factors are contributing to, is this sustainable for you? Are you actually managing to do this? Do you have a good understanding of what's involved? Like, there's so much more to it than just calories in, calories out.
Yeah,
but
just
at the
in
end of the
terms
day,
like even behaviours and
exactly.
everything. Yeah.
For sure. So that's probably something that, my experience has changed with from before I studied and became qualified to after. Even before I knew calories in, calories out. Most people know that. But there's so much more to it. And we obviously become upskilled and learn about those other factors more throughout our education and throughout practice experience as well. So
yeah, Aidan and I were saying like that we just wish we had the understanding of like energy balance and calories in, calories out. But I guess like after you have that knowledge, then expanding on that and being like, there's all these other things that impact it as well. Yes. Is also helpful.
Yeah, what makes it possible to actually do that? Like,
yeah, in practice. For sure. No, love that. Leading on from that, what's a nutrition thing, I guess, that you've done in the past that you maybe at this point are a little bit embarrassed to admit?
Yeah, I think, I don't know. I don't mean to come off as like dismissive or like that I've always been perfect or anything like that, but I'm not particularly embarrassed about anything that I've done nutritionally.
Sure.
Given that, I was lucky enough to have a pretty good balanced upbringing in terms of like dietary habits and like eating food and homemade food and balance of takeout and when it's appropriate and all that sort of stuff. So I've never really had any sort of issues with any weird or wild food consumption type habits.
Sure.
So I'm pretty lucky from that regard. But I'd say something that I have done that a lot of people are, I guess sometimes surprised to find out, given that I'm a dietitian, was that I did the keto diet for a couple of years.
For a couple of years?
Yeah, I did keto diet for quite a long time. I personally, for me, found that it worked really well. I quite enjoyed that style of eating.
Okay.
The main reason why I've changed from it is because I wanted to focus on a more performance based approach to nutrition to improve my powerlifting. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed on it potentially. And I know it's notorious for people can't stay on it, but I enjoyed staying on it. It suited me quite nicely, and I know I'm a pretty small subset of the population that potentially applies to, but obviously have the experience and education to recognize that it's not great for performance, or at least inferior to performance in terms of a high carbohydrate intake for the types of performance that I want to do. So I sort of cycled off it for that reason primarily, but I quite like it as a dietary approach. But
so you're not necessarily embarrassed about it.
Yeah, I'm not embarrassed about it. I think any of those sort of nutritional things that I have done in the past, I think have got me to the point now where I am in terms of having an understanding or a bit more of a lived experience of what people are often trying. I've tried intermittent fasting. I've tried a 24-hour fast once a week, a water fast. I've tried keto and all that sort of stuff. I'm not necessarily embarrassed by it because it's been a good learning experience and it gives me a different level of insight rather than people just looking from the outside in and going, keto diet's, it's not good for the rest of the population. Whereas cool, I've tried it. I know it's practically for me and for other people who are trying to perform not optimal. But I also can see how it would be applicable, and if it's your preference and you do enjoy it, I also then have the lived experience of like how to implement that effectively, as opposed to just that sort of outside in thing where it's like, yeah, it's something to be embarrassed about because it's like a fad diet or whatever else. And, you know, I don't think it necessarily is, but that's kind of I guess what would be kind of verging on something that I might not be embarrassed about, but something that would kind of cross into that realm.
Sure.
I look at it all as positive learning experiences.
Yeah. That sounds good. And the final question is, what is one of the most impactful experiences you've had either working with clients or, again, just as a dietitian in general?
Yeah, I think this one has come up quite a lot with a lot of different clients across my my career working with people, is that something I often get to a point with eventually is clients will reach out to me and go, you know what, I saw someone say this, and I used to think that's along those sorts of lines, like on social media or some sort of influencer post or something along those lines, whether it be regards to dietary choices or weight loss or, you know, a weight fluctuation or something like that. And then they'll message me and be like, I now have the insight to like not freak out when something like that happens to me. Like when the scale weight does go up 700 grams the next day compared to the day before and I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah.
I know not to freak out and that I haven't put on 700 grams of body fat overnight. And just developing like that sort of education that gives people, I like to refer to it as like the power to like logic your way out of an initial emotional response that could otherwise be quite negative or could derail the process. You know, in that example, it might be like you jump on the scales, you see you're 700 grams heavier and you're like, oh my God, I've screwed something up. I need to diet a bit harder or restrict this the next day. And then that starts that whole negative, like restrict, overeat cycle or binge restrict or whatever it might be. As opposed to just logically going, oh no, I had an extra 100 grams of carbohydrate. That's going to store an extra 300 grams of water. My scale weight's going to be up 400 grams because of that. You know, there might have been some extra food volume or some fiber in those foods I ate. That's contributing to that scale weight increase. And just having the ability to like step your way through what you might have done, logic your way out of it and balance that initial emotional response. Because we all have that emotional response.
Of course,
even as much as like people say, I don't really care about the scales. When you jump on and it's not what you're expecting to see, everyone I think has some degree of like, oh,
like that's higher than yesterday.
Yeah, or that's not what I wanted, or that's not what I've been working towards. What have I done wrong? And having the ability and education behind you to sort of counteract those, what can be a negative reaction to that is, I think, valuable. So I have a lot of clients that message me, even one this week, saying, you know what, I saw this girl posting on Instagram about her needing to get back on track after Easter after her weight going up 800 grams. And she's like, that would have used to have been me. Whereas now I know that it's just a bit of extra, scale weight fluctuation, get back to my normal routine and it'll be back down to normal in the next day or two.
Yeah, so like empowering people to not catastrophize after kind of seeing something online.
100%. And I think that's so valuable. And that's like a valuable skill to develop that will set you up for like a more sustainable relationship with food or better eating behaviors long term, rather than just being like having an effective diet phase. Having the education that will last the rest of your life to be able to develop a better relationship with food or a better understanding of what you're doing, I think is super powerful.
Hell yeah. So to finish up, is there anything you want to plug, maybe your Instagram handle or anything like this?
Sure. If you don't already, you can follow me at lift_dietetics. So that one there you can jump on. I post a fair bit of informational content on there. It's where I do like to get a lot of resources up, even just a bit of a balance sometimes between nutrition and exercise as well, given that a lot of my previous experience in the industry comes from an exercise standpoint, and my undergraduate degree was exercise science as well as nutrition. I do sometimes have that crossover with like lifting or exercise related, posts and content, as well as the nutritional education side of things. So it's a bit of both, and obviously it's a bit of extra insight into my own special personality, as we all like to make our own social media things as well. So jump on me at Lift Dietetics, and anything on there, you're welcome to browse through, shoot me a message or a DM. Otherwise, you can obviously book online for myself or any of the other Ideal Nutrition team there too.
Perfect plug. It's almost like you've done this before. Okay, sweet. Thanks for chatting with us, Tyler.
Thank you,
we're going to get in the next person. All right, Monica. Hello. Welcome to the Ideal Nutrition podcast. So obviously your first time on here. So give us a little bit of an intro into who you are.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me on. Yes, I'm Monica. I am an accredited practicing dietitian. I'm just about to do the sports dietetics course as well to become a sports dietitian.
Oh, you and Hanah will be doing it at the same time.
Yes, at the same time. Very excited about that. I guess I have been with Ideal for just a couple months now, so I'm the newest member to the team. I have a lot of, I guess, like active clients, from everyday athletes to more competitive athletes. Work with disordered eating clients, weight loss, iron deficiency, gastrointestinal issues, things like that. But yeah, those are probably my main sort of clients that I work with.
Yeah, and you do CrossFit as well?
That's right. CrossFit, strength and conditioning, that kind of training that I really love.
And the team is trying to push you into powerlifting.
Trying. We're not there yet.
Not successfully.
But we'll see what happens in a couple months.
So we're going to run through a few questions that we're running the whole team through. So the first thing is, what's something you wish you knew about nutrition before you did your degree or became a dietitian?
Yeah, for sure. One nutrition related thing that I wish I knew prior to being a dietitian is simply the fact that nutrition as a whole is a science, and recommendations for healthy dietary patterns and even to more unique and specific recommendations are based on, systematic reviews and meta-analyses, not just the opinion of a health professional or an influencer, as well as the fact that it's also incredibly complex, multifaceted and individual. And the reason I wish I knew this is because it would have allowed me to be a lot more curious and skeptical of fad diets, well-marketed supplements that aren't necessarily evidence-based, on top of just the random advice of other people, which I believe would have really helped me a lot along my own health journey.
Yeah, I love that. And leading in from that, what is something that you maybe were or are embarrassed to admit that you've done in the past from a maybe food or nutrition perspective and before being a dietitian?
Yeah, so I've been through a journey, and during high school I sought help from a naturopath when I had bad acne, and she advised me to do a food intolerance test, which involved her cutting off a sample of my hair, which I was really worried about because I was like,
not my hair.
No, I just grew my hair really long.
Hair.
Oh, thank you. And she sent it away to be tested, so I did that. And little did I know at the time that these tests don't actually tell you what foods you're intolerant to. And so I sadly cut out a lot of my favourite foods for over 6 months for no reason. Didn't help me whatsoever. So yeah, a little embarrassed about that. But you live and you learn.
I mean, you were taking the advice of another health professional that you thought was more educated than you. So
that's right. And I think I was just like so worried about my acne at the time that I was going to do whatever.
Do anything
it takes. Yeah.
And last one is, what is the most impactful experience that you've had either working with clients or once again just being a dietitian?
Yeah, so I'm constantly learning so much from my clients, but I want to talk about one in particular who was a young female that came to me after losing 30 kilos. She was very low in energy, not feeling like herself, and had all these symptoms of low energy availability after being on such a low calorie intake for so long. She was a bit lost on where to go and scared to eat more in case she regained some of the weight that she'd lost, but knew that what she was doing at the time wasn't sustainable. So we ended up coming up with a plan where she started to fuel her body adequately, ended up maintaining her weight and had energy to train again, and felt like a completely new person, despite being scared to implement the plan to begin with. And this situation had a big impact on me in really solidifying the importance of trust and communication, really listening in, and the importance of making sure that they know you are on their team to help them achieve their goals in a way that they are willing to do so alongside your professional guidance and support. So it really solidified that, yes, you can know the science behind the nutrition, but you also have to consider the person, the emotion, their worries and apprehension, as well as the vulnerability in asking for help too. And them trusting you is an honour and a big responsibility, but one that I'm very grateful to have.
Oh, I love that. Because that trust and rapport is super important, especially if you're working with someone who is, maybe there's like body image issues or disordered eating. It's helpful in any case to have trust and rapport, but especially in those circumstances, that trust is so important, and it's like a big responsibility.
Absolutely. And I think because a lot of the time these people will come to you and they've heard so many different conflicting sources of information, and they're just so confused on like, where do I actually go? And they've
come to you as often a last resort, and they're like, you know what, actually I just really need help from someone who knows what they're doing, and put that trust in you to actually just listen to them and help them.
Yeah. And just to wrap up for you, I know like you're very active on social media, like your Instagram content is amazing, and you've just hit 10K.
Yes.
Yeah, such a big milestone. Did you want to quickly maybe plug your socials?
For sure. So Fueling Performance, FUELLING Performance. That's my page. Just post a lot of, I guess, nutrition related resources, tips, practical tips to implement in your everyday life, all about performance related nutrition rather than, just diet related stuff that all the influencers put out. So
sweet. Yeah, you've got a great page. Thank you for sitting down and chatting with me. Thanks so much. We're going to bring in our final team member now, and that's Sammy. All right, final team member for the day, and that is Sammy. So give me a little intro into who you are, Sammy.
Thanks. So, I'm an accredited practicing dietitian, just like everyone else here. But I have done my Master of Dietetics at UQ and the Bachelor of Exercise and Nutrition Science. And I started with Ideal back in August in 2022, and it's been pretty awesome working there so far. I've been working with a lot more performance-based athletes. That's team sports, powerlifting as well, which I've just done a comp, which is pretty fun and exciting. So cool. And as well, endurance athletes, and I really do have a passion for that too. I do work with everyone else in terms of, general population, and then as well like our managing relationship with food and eating disorder related clients as well. They're kind of more my other interests, I suppose.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So we're going to jump straight into the few questions that we have for the team today. So we'll start with, what's something you wish you knew about nutrition before your degree, or like studying dietetics, becoming a dietitian?
Yeah. So there's one thing that I feel like if I could do maybe part of my uni degree again, I would, where I would actually go in and pick more psychology courses, because coming into like the profession as in private practice dietetics, like I've got the science, got all the science nutrition side of things under my belt, but I feel like there was a lot more psychological kind of aspects that maybe I didn't quite have at the start. Obviously now I've gone in and made sure I'm pretty well covered in that area, but I feel like for any dietetics students, if you're going to do private practice, I feel like that's something that would be really beneficial, because it seems like it's becoming more and more common that there is mental health conditions associated with eating habits as well. So, feeling really confident in that space and knowing how to, talk to these people, obviously in a way that's going to be helpful for managing their mental health condition and the nutrition in one. It's not, you can't really do one without the other, I suppose. So I feel like it's,
Yeah, 100%. I think it's one thing I didn't expect being a dietitian, like when I was doing my degree, is like the behavior change stuff, the psychological stuff of what we do. So that's a good one. That's a good answer. I like that.
I remember, I think it was maybe a first month or something, I was practicing, and I was like, doing, I thought, fantastic meal plans and giving really good advice, really practical stuff, the science. But then there would be, I think it was maybe my first couple of clients who had some, now I would see them as big red flags for like disordered eating and things like that. But then I didn't know that, and I would just be like, oh, maybe this is fine. But obviously, big eye opener. I quickly realized that I needed more skills in that, and have done. Been able to
more work in that area, and I think also just experience too goes a long way.
Totally,
and just being able to work with people, it's a skill you build over time.
1,000%, yeah.
And leading on from that, what's a nutrition thing that you are embarrassed to admit that you've maybe done in the past?
I feel like this one's interesting.
I feel like all the girls have something a bit more crazy than the guys.
Yeah, mine was I had an interest in nutrition pretty when I was in high school, and I thought I knew what was good. I thought I knew what was healthy, and so I actually went and read a bunch of books, and there was one that was quitting sugar book, I suppose.
Oh, you did that one.
I don't know if I'm so I just decided, hey, that sounds really legit. It sounds like I can improve so many aspects of my health by quitting sugar. And so I made a little Instagram and set a date for myself of when I was quitting sugar for the rest of my life. And do you know, the thing that's embarrassing about that though is that I didn't know that like now I can see any clients that do something similar where they create this really big restriction on something, it just makes you want it so much more. So I ended up having a really weird relationship with food where I was making foods that I didn't really enjoy, but just because they were sugar-free, and just had this impression that was so much better for me, when really, you know, at the end of the day, it all comes down to calories and things like that. If you're wondering about, you know, body composition and maybe, you know, look, health is different to that obviously, but I was just doing weird things like... Yeah,
just taking like weird extremes that made no sense.
1,000%.
Yeah.
And, and just thought that sugar was poison and all this stuff. And it didn't last that long. It probably lasted like 3 to 6 months.
That's a while.
It was, I guess it was a while, but like, I tried to do it and I was like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? It should be fine to do it, but absolutely not. Like, sugar is not the reason for so many people. Like, it's just a small part of it. And at the end of the day, sugar is sugar. So eating rice malt syrup versus, you know, something else, maybe a little bit micronutritionally different, and fiber stuff is a bit different, but at the end of the day, like, it's sugar is sugar, and like, eat what you enjoy in moderation and all that side of things, right? So
so I feel like even being dietitians, like, we've all tried, I think, maybe Aidan hasn't, but we've all everyone else is like, we tried this fad diet. And we're like kind of embarrassed to admit that. Like, I did raw till 4. Hanah did some like kind of vegan-ish, but like from a maybe disordered eating perspective. So I think we all have like that similar experience, even as like health professionals. And leading into our last question, what is one of the most impactful experiences you've had working with clients?
This one, I feel like it's a little bit like, I don't know, I find it really both personally and for the client, I feel like it's pretty awesome. Some of the things that we've achieved. So there's like quite a group of clients that I've seen now that have gone from having disordered relationship with food or eating disorders, and have overcome that and actually moved on to their next goal, where it's like fueling for performance, and they're actually competing in things now or playing sports they never thought they could play in. And I just think that's so cool that you can, like, they come in to see me for a specific thing. And it was a huge deal getting through that. But now they're like in a space where they have all this energy and this capacity to even take on another goal. And it's just like going from just living and trying to, you know, keep alive and do things like this, but then going to thriving and actually, competing at a really high level, some of them. So it's pretty cool.
I think any time where we're working on like someone's relationship with food, I mean, for me, that seems really impactful.
Oh yeah.
Like, cause I think it's one of the most undervalued things is just having a good relationship with food and your body. And if you can help someone get from like point A to point B, I find that so impactful.
Yeah, definitely. But can't wait to keep working more in that space, because I think it's so enjoyable for me, and that's probably the most impactful for everyone, I think. Cool.
And I'm just getting everyone to plug their socials. So if you want to kind of tell us a little bit about what you do online.
So I have my Instagram page is probably where I'm the most active, and that is like at nourished.by.sammy. So I'd like to post on there things like, obviously, evidence-based nutrition information, some fun stuff like reels with different things, and tips and stuff, recipes occasionally. I do have a TikTok, but I think it needs some work.
Same.
But and like, obviously always happy to answer questions on there, and, you know, just get in contact with people and stuff and help them if they have any little questions and things, or just create that community more. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for having a chat with us.
No, you're welcome.
That has been the Ideal Nutrition team. Hopefully that was a good way to showcase a little bit of them as individuals and the kind of work that we do and everything like that. And hopefully there was some value to be gotten out of that, even if it's just seeing like the little details, like how dietitians aren't necessarily perfect and everything like that with their own nutrition, even quite a bit of time into learning a lot about nutrition. But apart from that, this has been episode 100, and hopefully there's many more to come.